Hey, and welcome to the third episode of the Headliner Podcast. Headliner is a video editor that allows you to take audio from your podcast and rework it into a short clip for social media. It basically allows you to entice people into checking out your podcast by sharing an interesting blurb from your episode in the form of a video. You know how everyone's always talking about how hard it is to get listens or find new podcasts to check out? Well, we're kinda here to change that. I'm your designated host, Nick, and today we're going to be talking about a couple of best practices for promoting your podcast on social media. We're going to be doing this in the form of talking about a recommended image type, as well as how adding a simple outro video to your headliner or video clips can help with branding your content and give it a clear call to action. We'll also hear a bit from one of our headliner highlights, as well as from Bailey, who I got to talk to about a problem that befalls podcasters. Anyway, enough yammering, let's get on with the show. So on our latest Headliner highlight, which is an ongoing series on our blog, we heard from Shannon and Phaedra of Stinger TV and Movie Podcast in order to learn a bit about their show and how they like promoting it. We also heard about why they think posting videos containing audio from their show is an effective podcast marketing strategy because it allows non-podcast listeners to get a sample of their show. Take a listen.
The other thing that we like to do is we like to do audio clips because we found that a lot of the people that are interested in what we're talking about aren't necessarily podcast listeners. They don't always get podcasts. So when they get the chance to do some audio clips or even video clips, they get a better sense of who Shannon and I are and what we like to talk about.
I personally think that what they're saying makes a lot of sense. For people who don't typically listen to podcasts, it's kind of hard to get into the medium, so naturally getting to listen to segments from episodes on Twitter or Instagram is a great way to get a sample of what a podcast might be like. This is actually something that I do in my own free time whenever I listen to something on a podcast that I like. For example, when Conan O'Brien had Dana Carvey do a mini-series with him, I actually found myself opening up Headliner and sending clips from the show to my buddies as a means to get them to actually check out the podcast. A lot of people I know don't listen to podcasts, but they do like a lot of the content within it. So, when I hear something that I like and I want to share it with somebody, I don't tell them to check out the episode. I create a video using Headliner and I send it over to them. They get it on a platform that they're familiar with, such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and then if they like the clip, they'll go ahead and check out the podcast themselves. Doing this as the creator of a podcast is essentially the same thing, only with your own content instead of someone else's show. Headliner Highlight is a series where we hear from podcasters that use Headliner in order to learn a bit about their show, how they promote it, and how Headliner fits into that equation. If what Shannon and Phaedra had to say piqued your interest at all, be sure to check out the full Headliner highlight over on our blog, headliner.app/blog. We post new ones every week, and we'll be sharing our favorite bit from each one on every episode of this podcast. And if you'd like to submit some audio to be featured in a future highlight, be sure to reach out at info@headliner.app. And now, how about we mix things up a little bit by hearing from Bailey, who I got to have an interesting conversation with about podcasting and its discovery problem.
Hey, Nicholas.
Hey, Bailey.
Welcome back to Wednesday with Bailey Nicholas. That's
Okay.
not the official title. So what are we talking about today?
Wait, what? Are you kidding me? I literally was just like, oh, Bailey, what are we talking about? And you're like, let's just record.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this can be part of it. Do you have anything for me?
I just feel so blindsided right now.
This is how I see these going. Unless someone starts sending us stuff for me to do, like we suggested last week, and we'll continue to send me things for me to do, then I walk in this room and we talk about something podcast related.
Okay. Yeah, that's totally doable. I'm also going to start creating a list of things to talk about then. So, okay, I have something for us.
Okay.
So, okay, this entire episode, I've mentioned at least once or twice in it that people have trouble finding podcasts to begin with, especially if they aren't podcast listeners at all.
I've heard of this discoverability problem.
Yeah, it's like the big buzzword that's on it's everywhere. Just everyone always brings it up. So, do you have a way that you discover podcasts, or how did you discover a podcast or two that you like?
I think generally when I look for podcast, it's usually by looking for a topic or an interviewed person. Like I'm like, oh, I want to hear this person talk. But generally, that's if I'm in search of and I want to like learn mode.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's like on. This is not staged. Very much true. Like on social media, like I'll just be scrolling through Twitter or what have you, and someone will link a clip, and I'll hear it, and I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this. Like 9 times out of 10, that's how I end up listening to podcasts.
Okay.
Because of like the big discoverability problem that exists now, it's mentally too much work for me to think, oh, I'm going to go to wherever and like try to find a podcast.
Gotcha.
It's more of I'm doing my everyday life and a clip, I see someone posts a clip of a podcast online and I'm like, oh, wait, I want to listen to this.
Have you ever like, and this is something I'm actually just curious about, have you ever gone on like the iTunes or the Apple Podcast chart?
Yeah.
So that's something I've actually never even considered doing, and I don't know why.
I've looked at, but I mean, the big thing with the discoverability that no one really is kind of addressing yet, wink,
fancy.
wink, is podcasts are so long and it's such a commitment to them that like just seeing, for instance, on the podcast charts or even like Spotify's new playlist thing is like just seeing the title and potentially the cover art is not enough to convince me to listen to it.
Yeah.
Because generally the first 15, 30, 60 seconds of a podcast is relatively bullshit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's totally like, it's either like an ad read, a intro song,
a setup of some
a
sort,
setup. Maybe it's like them announcing live shows.
which is all fine and dandy, but if we're getting to a place where we're putting podcasts in playlists and we want to convince people to listen to it, like that has to change where I can quickly, much like a song, for instance, when you listen to a song, it plays through, you would know within the first 30 seconds, like, I like this beat, I like this melody, I like their voice, like, I kind of know that, like, I will like this, and then you listen or not. With a podcast, they're so long and complex, and no one sets up podcasts in a way that's, like, within the first 30 seconds, 15 seconds, really it shouldn't be 30, it's probably, like, 15 seconds, do I deliver, not a synopsis, but, like, if someone's being interviewed, like, putting the clip first, or, like, setting the stage, and I feel like that's really missing from podcasts.
It's weird that you said all this, and this totally isn't like set up at all. Like you literally did blindside me at the beginning of this.
I know, it's my favorite thing to do.
Dastardly. But no, it's really funny that you mention all this because I was actually thinking about the same thing. Like going back to how Spotify works when you listen to a song, you're usually sold in the first 30 seconds. And it's gotten to the point where like songwriters are literally changing the construction of music to put the chorus within that 30 seconds. So like Post Malone is now like super well known for all his songs starting on a chorus and being like 2.5 minutes long. And it's because his songs are like designed to play with Spotify's algorithm in mind.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I think to start with discoverability and like naturally the progression is like where is a lot of focus in podcasting, and it is Spotify. And Spotify did just come out with these playlists, and that was one of the biggest things I had with it, was like podcasts in their current format aren't built for playlists. They're not built for episodic consumption, but really that, in my opinion, that's where the future of podcasts are going, unless it's like these more serialized, basically audiobooks, but they're podcasts.
They're the serialized like narratives.
Like
so,
Serial and all of that.
Yeah, like Serial or Not Another D&D Podcast.
Yeah.
Where like you do have to like actually listen to it in order.
Right. But like some of these other, they're more interview based or just topic based. I mean, I listen to a lot of marketing podcasts or strategy podcasts or advertising podcasts, and a lot of those are one-off like thought pieces or are interviews based. And then sometimes like I don't follow a full entire podcast. I have my go-tos. Yeah. But I don't necessarily care what everyone has to say in the marketing industry. It's like you see one or two, it catches your eye. More so than like, I follow this podcast and I'm going to listen to every single one because I care about every single person that comes on it. Like, that's impossible.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting. So the way I find podcasts by and large, I have like several ways. But like the first way is the boring way, which is, oh, I was just familiar with the host of this show from something else. So like a couple podcasts, like Off Camera with Sam Jones is arguably my favorite one. Technically not a podcast. It's a TV show that gets mirrored as a podcast.
Okay.
So I just happen to know the TV show and all the YouTube clips. And then when I'm on the train and I don't have access to either of those, I listen to the podcast version. All
right.
Other people like, I mean, I think I may have mentioned it, but I'm a huge like Jake and Amir nerd.
I don't even know who that is.
They're collegehumor.com.
Okay.
So yeah, like I'm a huge Jake and Amir guy, and like they have a podcast. So like naturally I listen to their podcast.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. The other way is when I actually, and this is more similar to you, when I actually need like something specific, like, oh, I'm super into, it's never marketing stuff with me. I'm not as cool as you, sorry. But like, oh, I'm super into like French New Wave movies. I want to listen to a podcast about the New Wave.
Right.
I'll actually like straight up go on Listen Notes, because Listen Notes allows you to type in keywords and then it'll actually just pull up a bunch of podcasts that mention the word French New Wave.
Nice.
Somewhere in like the show notes.
Okay, so it's based on the transcript? The keywords are based on the transcript? Oh, the show notes.
It's based on the show notes, right? I think they're doing transcript. I know Google wants to do that, and that's going to like ruin my life because I'll literally find way too much stuff to listen to.
It's so nice though.
Yeah, it's going to ruin my life in the most convenient way, which is like the only way you should ruin my life. You know? I
don't know. I like it. This was completely off topic. Ruin my life, completely non-convenient, dirty.
Yeah.
Like, just go for it.
Sinister, ruin your life.
Yeah. We might be able to use this as a separate segment. But okay. So you're kind of talking about one of your favorite podcasts. I forgot what the name of it was. The
TV show one?
The TV show one.
Okay.
Like, what are your thoughts around TV shows or any of these type of like basically YouTube video? Well, let's go this. Do you listen to podcasts on YouTube?
Oh, wow. That was a nice segue, Bailey.
What I was getting at was like, what are your thoughts around like kind of these non-podcast originating things, so video content becoming podcasts? Like, does it matter that they started as a video and are going to audio?
No. I mean, depending on the content itself, I guess, right? Because I've actually like thought about this where like I listen to a lot of like essay and editorial stuff.
Right.
And I may as well listen to it like it's a podcast because it's just on in the background.
Right.
So like I think it's harmless. Now, if you're asking about the other side of that, where it's like, oh, are you listening to straight up podcasts on YouTube?
Well, that was like the opposite segue was like having your podcast that you've made as a podcast. So like what we're doing now, if we were recording it as a video and then posting it to YouTube.
Like a full video.
Like a full video.
Okay. So yes, I would totally do that. And I do that actually with, I mean, the off-camera thing doesn't count because that's like natively a TV show.
Yeah.
It's an interview series. But like that Jake and Amir podcast I mentioned, they actually do on their Patreon now, like, oh, for $5 a month, you can get a different web series that they're working on, but you also get bonus episodes that are full video.
Right.
And the full video ones, I literally save them because I'm a meal prepper, so I like to like cook on a Sunday night for the week.
I've never seen you eat, so I don't know what meals you're
That's
prepping.
True. That's true. It's mostly like pretty pathetic excuses of food, if I'm being honest.
I unboxed my Cliff Bars and put them with labels on
Not that far from the truth. I'm a 24-year-old guy. It's not like I can actually cook.
Oh,
but
I mean, hey, I'm a 27-year-old girl, and I still basically do the same thing.
Yeah. Good to know I'm in like decent company there.
Yeah.
Then. But like, I'll be like doing all that stuff. I'll be like prepping meals and stuff for the week, or I'll just be like cleaning my apartment or something.
Right.
And like, I will literally have this episode and I'll be like, cool, I need background noise. Let me, Chromecast Vimeo onto my TV and like actually watch this as if it's a TV show. And it's just a podcast. So I actually love full episode or like full video podcasts.
Yeah.
Even like stuff created using like our full episode tool.
Right.
Like I was thinking about it and yeah, some people like need, how like some people sleep with the TV on and stuff?
Energy wasters.
Yes, the electricity haters of the world.
Yeah.
Like some people do that and they need like background noise and it's like, oh, a podcast, like put a nice colored background in the waveform, and that's like a decent screensaver while you're doing something.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole YouTube thing, it's interesting to watch as especially as more of these creators that have their platform, they've made a big name, like the College Humor guys, how now, especially the YouTubers are like, oh, there's money. I mean, my fans are in podcasting, or there's money in podcasting. Like, I'm going to go there. And naturally, they're uploading them onto the platform that they know, YouTube.
Yeah.
And like, how will that change YouTube? And even so, YouTube tweet on that International Podcast Day. And
They did?
yeah, so it was interesting because YouTube is a video platform, and I was wondering how they felt about like this non-video content still being video content, like showing up in excess. And it said the tweet was something paraphrased here, like what podcasts do you listen to on YouTube? And I was like, what an interesting phrase for a video company to ask what you're listening to on their platform.
Is it though? I mean, this might just be like where I grew up and how I grew up, but like when YouTube was like a new thing in like 2006, that was like I was at the age where I was like actually starting to understand what music was. So like it's not like I actually listened to the radio. I got into Radiohead and stuff by watching YouTube videos of just their songs.
That's true. And like they created the whole music player just for like people use YouTube. Yeah. So I guess people have always used videos as a source to listen to audio.
Exactly. Like it doesn't, I mean, there used to be literal channels on TV dedicated to just basically doing that, just playing music.
Called MTV.
No, not MTV. Like not music videos.
Oh, I know which ones you're talking about. Like the ones that are like reggae or like the pop rock or whatever.
I call them like the crappy dinner party channels.
They were basically audiograms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
It was just like it was the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it had like maybe a stock animation in the back. So like I don't think there's an issue with it. I know like some podcast hosts or like some podcast marketing sites say it doesn't make sense to share it on YouTube because nobody will find it. But like, is it really that much work to put it up anyway?
No, especially when it's automated.
Yeah, when it's automated using cool apps like Headliner.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, more you know song plays now. But like, it takes like an extra 3 minutes maybe out of your day to like download the file, upload it to YouTube, paste your show notes.
Right.
You know, like 3 to 5 minutes tops. So like, why wouldn't you do that if it gets you like listeners? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this started out talking about discoverability and how I found I have a problem with podcast. This is me wrapping up and then. No, I like podcasts.
Nice backpedaling there.
So to recap here, discoverability. It's a thing that we're trying to solve with things you don't know about yet. But until then, Nicholas is laughing.
I'm just like, this is very like free association.
I know, now I'm just wasting time. Yeah, I don't have anything else. Stay tuned, listen to the podcast. Check out our blog where you can tell me things to do and I can report back on them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you clearly didn't listen to the last podcast. You can tune in at about, I think it's around 6 minutes is when the important thing, that's when I start talking.
Nice. That didn't hurt.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. So today I thought I'd share a tip that I like to keep in mind when it comes to designing clips for a podcast. I've found that using faces in videos as opposed to faceless podcast art can lead to greater engagement on social media. I think it's because it gives the viewer something to latch onto and relate to. And there's actually a bit of psychology at play here to back me up. Just hear me out on this one. Robert Lowell Fantz, an American developmental psychologist, famously introduced what became known as the preferential looking paradigm in the 1960s in order to study cognitive development in babies. And one of the things he found through this paradigm was that babies, and in turn the human mind on a fundamental level, actually preferred looking at human faces as opposed to something without a face, which in his case was a black or white bullseye target. So, if we use artwork that features the human face on it, we're actually giving our audience content that their mind will prefer over stuff that doesn't have a face on it. And before anyone mistakenly thinks that I casually bring psychology up in all my conversations, that knowledge was all thanks to a half-remembered lecture and a quick trip to Wikipedia for some verification. Anyway, remembering to use an image of either you or your co-host, a guest on your show, or even the subject of your podcast episode or clip can actually really help you stand out on social media. It personalizes your content and makes you out to be a bit more than a floating voice that people listen to on the way to work. One of the other things you can always use to spruce up your videos is an intro or outro video to add some additional branding to your clips. You can add intro and outro videos onto your Headliner projects as a pro user, which is the subscription version of our app that adds a whole bunch of goodies to your account. I personally think that intro and outro videos are perfect for adding an easily recyclable call to action to each of your projects. You can use it to remind people to check out your show if they liked what they saw, as well as show them where your show is hosted, your website, or simply tell them to follow you on social media. And the best part about these clips is that they're separate videos that don't need to be created on Headliner, though there's nothing stopping you from creating a project and exporting that for your outro videos. So if you have experience using other video editors, or you want to pay someone on a website like Fiverr to make something for you, you can import some really cool custom animations to use as an outro clip. Alternatively, you could also work in some full video that you shot using a camera or your cell phone telling people where to find your show. Or if you don't think animation or full video is quite your speed, you could always create a project in Headliner and import a custom image that you then export as a video to use in your outro. You can add an intro or outro clip to your video by clicking the blue export button on the timeline and clicking Add Intro or Add Outro on the window that'll appear on your screen. But guys, I think it's time we started winding things down for this week's episode. Feel free to email me at nicholas@headliner.app if you have anything you want me to discuss on a future episode, or have a Headliner or podcasting related question that you want me to take a crack at answering. And with that, I think we've reached a stopping point for this week's Headliner podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it and that there was something here of value to you. Have a good one.